What's up, D-Gens? I'm back again, giving you some more information. It's all free. If you want to pay for it, by all means, feel free. Actually, on that note, I do have some affiliates I just want to go over with you guys. Please make your way just below the video. Give me a like, a subscribe, also free. And below that, you'll see a little comment section there in that area towards the top. It's going to be my affiliates. There are two books that I primarily use, MyBookie and GT Bets. Both of them I did go ahead and get affiliate deals with. So if you do not have a book already that you're going to use for this upcoming season, may I recommend either one of them. I will tell you just from my personal experience, MyBookie is typically the faster book, meaning that the lines are put up faster. And usually, and this is not an exaggeration, when the games are over Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, the lines are up for the following week. Usually the first week or two, it takes a little bit longer. There's more adjustments, more line makers, and all that other crap. But after the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, usually honestly by the end of the first 2 to 3 weeks, those lines are up really, really quickly. So honestly, if you wanted to, and if you're trying to get ahead of the game like you should be, Sunday night or early Monday morning, like 1, 2 in the morning, you should be able to get down whatever you need to get down, or at least lower limits. I believe $500 is like the limit. So I don't know how many of us are going too far above that. I know these big, like 100,000 bettors, like, oh, you can only get $500. $500 is a decent amount, man. For like an average working dude, $500 is a pretty decent amount to get down on like a week 2 game. All right, so chill. But anyways, that's MyBookie. GT Bets, I will tell you the reason I use them so frequently. One, the lines typically take a little bit longer to move, which is good. So if you're trying to kind of play line moves and things like that, you can find some books like MyBookie or even like Bovada that are going to move the lines a little bit quicker and then kind of look ahead, right? It's like looking into the future. You know where the line's going to go. You can use GT Bets to get the better line if it moved against you, or take an earlier line if you need to. Also, though, GT Bets has this really cool program that's like a My Favorite Teams program, and basically they give you a half point in any direction or in your direction for your favorite team. Now, I suggest not actually using your favorite team, but instead using a team that you think is going to provide you value. So like this year, my favorite team I have listed as the Ravens. 1, because it's a team I'm going to be very focused on. 2, because I think the estimations on the Ravens are really wild, one direction or the other, right? Some people think they're going to be really good. Other people think they're going to be really shitty. Either way, the ambiguity is going to give us some room to work with. And then the extra half point, I can almost guarantee you, especially in their division, right, in this lower scoring AFC North, aside from the Bengals, that half point can really come into play. So instead of the 3, you're going to get 3.5. Basically, they're just going to give you a half point in your favor, right? Instead of laying 3, you're going to lay 2.5. So it really does come into play, and it can help you out a lot throughout the year. Like I said, just kind of look ahead, especially if you're already watching these videos. You probably are looking ahead, and see what team you think you're going to be playing with a lot, or what team can give you some really high value. Some other teams that I looked at for that particular promotion, right, is the Falcons, because I think that they are a really good team. I think that they're going to show a lot more improvement than what we expect from them, and I think that they're being really overlooked because the record was not as great as it could have been last year. Also, the Giants, kind of the same situation, right? Second year under Dayball, pretty much everybody's back. I do expect Saquon to come back, so I do think you can get some value on that team as well, where they're kind of being overlooked. Anyways, that's enough of that. Like I said, if you get a chance, please go down there. If you don't have a book already, please look into that. Even if you don't make a deposit into it, just to open the book, open your account with them, and kind of have access to those lines, because I can almost guarantee you at some point throughout the year, MyBookie is going to be one of the first lines up, and GT Bets is going to be one of the best lines out there. So that's my ad for the day. Let's move on to it. If you're looking at the screen, you are seeing the preseason record for all of the active coaches. Now, I apologize because I do not have the preseason record for the new coaches, Jonathan Gannon, D'Amico Ryans, Shane Steichen. As far as I know, Jonathan Gannon and Steichen don't have any sort of like participation or anything like that in earlier games that would like want to be counted for. D'Amico Ryans, I could be wrong, but I believe this is also his like first go around. So, anyways, besides those three guys, we have everybody else from best to worst, basically. Robert Saleh and Matt Eberflus being the two best ones, the 100% win record. I do suggest very strongly in the preseason using this chart. Go over it, do what you got to do, just take a screenshot, whatever, to kind of use this, because preseason is definitely the time you want to play the coaches who really give a shit and care against the coaches who couldn't care less, right? In my personal opinion, and it's even listed out just to the right of the kind of heat chart there is the negative and positives. Basically, we just did like a normal distribution, right? If you're familiar with that process. And 68% is like the bell curve. So the middle 68% is like roughly average. That's where you kind of should fall into. The only couple of coaches that fall outside of that on the positive side are exactly who we just talked about. Matt Eberflus, Robert Saleh, and John Harbaugh with the Ravens. Three coaches we know really care about preseason and want to do it. And John Harbaugh has done it for several years at this point, which is why he's at the top of my list. Negative outliers, Kevin O'Connell, Dan Campbell, Brandon Staley, and Nick Sirianni. If you watched my last video, I did say the Eagles play against the Ravens in week 2 of the preseason, which is the week after the Hall of Fame game, and we are taking the Ravens to win that game. Other than that, these teams don't really match up very much, but there's definitely some play teams and some play against teams. So keep this handy, keep it somewhere. Aside from this, I am going to go over 8 teams that we are going to break down, or at least give some information on, regarding Warren Sharp's NFL book this year. And I think, in the last video, I said I was going to have some like screenshots and things like that up. Unfortunately, I really can't show too much of those, just without some sort of like backlash against it, showing too much information or giving away free info, whatever. The guy works hard on his book too. I don't want to do that to him, but I will give you the information, and I'll go over my coaching grades from last year for the team. So, if we take a look and pull up this grade chart here, this is from worst to best as far as grades are concerned from last year. Some of the teams up there that look like, man, that's kind of a shitty grade. A lot of times it is personnel, right? Like the 49ers, like the second worst team by grade. That's not a Kyle Shanahan thing. Typically, he's towards the top of the list. That is more of having to play with Brock Purdy and kind of adjustments and things like that. Also, kind of a weird year because they went through so many quarterbacks. Anyways, I'll stop explaining that. You can look through it if you like. If not, just sit back, put your feet up, take a listen here. So the first team we're going to go over is the Cardinals. Not really a lot to talk about here. Pretty straightforward in the book. Warren basically disagrees. The team was bad last year. We got even worse, obviously. Once Kyler went down, it was really terrible from top to bottom, right? Personnel issues, play calling issues, coaching issues. So all that stuff is there. This, like I said, there's not a whole lot to dive into with that other than just know it was bad. It was bad all around. Efficiency was bad. Play calling was bad. All that stuff was just down the drain. Injury luck was bad as well. This year, they do come in with a new coach and a backup quarterback because Kyler's obviously hurt to start off the year. They still have the personnel issues is the main problem, really, and the main takeaway here. Right? Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is not there anymore. Kyler's starting off hurt. There's not really a whole lot to work with, so this is a true rebuilding year. We've gone over this before. There's just not too much value on the Cardinals team, mainly because everybody knows this. This is not like a secret. So if anything, you may want to play them later in the season, because right now the lines are going to be as short as they're ever going to be on the Cardinals. Once they get their ass kicked 2, 3, 4 times, the line's going to be really, really big. So if you want to play against the Cardinals, you have a short window, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, where you can do so at the beginning of the year before it's confirmed how bad they are. The first week of the season, they do play Washington, and for a lot of people, that's not really a play-on team, so you don't see too much, money or people running into bet Washington. But let's talk about that team next, actually. Washington last year, and I'm assuming this year as well, bad coaching, right? That's what was the takeaway from this book. It was just bad coaching, bad play calling, very inefficient, really no adjustments. Not a whole lot was done to make this team better than what the roster is, right? So the roster is what it is, and that's pretty much it. You're not going to get a whole lot else. Last year, obviously, there was like a quarterback carousel where just new quarterback after new quarterback after new quarterback, whether it was injuries or issues. And even spanning back further than just last year, there's constantly been a quarterback turnover with this Washington team. And that is one really big glaring red flag for Ron Rivera, because he's been there now for a few years and he's not really made a true decision on a quarterback, which is like the most important position, right? So really, really bad coaching. And that's just kind of an example of, like, we have a guy here for a few years and he's gone after one after another and never really gone anywhere with it. So take that for what you will. Aside from that, the running back room has been pretty subpar. Antonio Gibson, for as big of a name as he is, if you think he's a big name, has not really produced a whole lot of efficiency. He has not really produced as many explosive plays as he was previously. Brian Robinson, also not really an efficient running back. He's just he's more of a short yardage guy, honestly. And that's kind of how most teams would use him. But he has not really been used that way. They've been using him more as like a 3-down back, or trying to make him a 3-down back, and it just has not worked, and they have not adjusted. Now, the offensive line is somewhat to blame there as well. They did have really bad numbers per pretty much every metric, including like the ESPN, like the win, pass block or run block, win rate, whatever the hell they call it. Bad numbers, just bad metrics. Doesn't really take a rocket scientist for that one. The one thing that I will say, and again, I have mentioned this in previous videos, is that the silver lining to all of this, and if you are a Washington fan, kind of what you're looking forward to, is that Eric Bieniemy is the new offensive coordinator. And by all signs and everything that just kind of was reconfirmed to me in the book, Ron Rivera is not just not a great quarterback, but he's more there as like a stabilizer. He was always meant to be more of like a stopgap. And this very clearly, at least to me, seems like a kind of a passing of the baton. We finally got a guy that we really want in here as a head coach. Now it's just a matter of kind of bringing him on board. We don't want to step on Ron's toes. We're going to give him either this whole year or kind of a transition period, so we don't have this massive overturn. So we'll start off the year with Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator, knowing that he's kind of the next guy in waiting. He has some control of the reins when it comes to like personnel and things like that, and then letting him eventually take over the team entirely, maybe at the end of the year or maybe even mid-season if they start off really slow. Whatever it is, it seems like they're doing Ron kind of a favor, but also he's kind of helping them out by not having like this huge turnover where they're going like 0-16 or whatever for the first year. Anyways, that's kind of the silver lining. That's the first two teams that we're looking at. Washington, I can almost guarantee you, if I were to play that game, I'm going to play Washington. The only thing is, it's 6.5. I don't really trust that game to be a very high-scoring game. Both of these offenses are very slow. Both of these defenses are very terrible, though. So, a couple big plays could make this the over, could make it an under. If they don't, they don't put anything out there. As far as sides are concerned, Washington, of course, I think is going to get the win. But wouldn't be entirely surprised if the Cardinals won. Or at least covered, right? This could be one of those like 17-14 kind of games, and it's a 6.5 point line. If I did want to do something with this, I would possibly tease it and tease Washington down to just a half point, so it's basically like a money line. The only thing is, one, I don't really like teasing it, and two, like I said, I'm not entirely surprised if the Cardinals do come out and win this one game. Right, these bad teams that come out and have the one good week one where there's no tape on anybody, it's all brand new, I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm most likely completely staying off that game. Next team here is going to be the Falcons. And this is, like I said, a team that I'm pretty high on, and I'm actually pretty high on this team after reading the chapter in the book. There's a lot of really good notes. I think I totally overlooked them last year. I knew that they were like a decent team. They were better than I think what most people expected. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me is in my grading sheet, they were ranked 19th from the bottom, which is 1, 2, 3. They were 15th, so they're just like literally one notch above average. So they were in that top half of offenses, and that was with really just a run game, right? With new quarterback that is Desmond Ritter, and then Marcus Mariota, who we don't think is really that great. So Arthur Smith had a lot of good things going here for him. I'm just going to read you a couple of things that I notated here. So one, great play action usage, really got the defense not just bite down on it because they're such a run heavy team, but they also passed well off of it. One of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot with the play action is you cannot play action and then pass the ball 4 yards, because when you do the play action, all of the safeties are, they should be, the safeties and the linebackers are coming up to try and stop that run. And so if they come up and you pass 4 yards from the line of scrimmage, well, now you're just passing right to them. So you're not trying to have these little 3-4 yard passes. You're trying to make a deep downfield pass, or at least an intermediate pass, to get behind the linebackers, to get between that second and third level. The Falcons really, really did play that. So they didn't pass a lot, but when they did, and especially when they passed off of the play action, not only was it really efficient, but they used it really well. They knew exactly where to go with it. Just a great strategy overall by Arthur Smith. Now, they did best in the fourth quarter and the second half overall. Now, I do think personally, this is not in the book, this was just my personal opinion, a lot of that has to do with being such a run-heavy team. Like, how many times do we see Derrick Henry, or back in the day, if you guys still remember, like Marion Barber with the Cowboys, do amazing in the second half of the game, where the first half is them like just grinding, grinding, kind of putting a beating on that defensive line, on those linebackers, making them move, getting them tired. And in the second half, those guys are tired, right? The offensive line may still be tired as well, but the running back is coming in, he's lowering his shoulder, he's making bigger plays. And in this Falcons team, not only do they have a great offensive line, but they have a rotation of running backs that they're using, and they should probably still stay with that. Obviously, better rotation now with Bijan, but a rotation where in the second half your running back should be fresh, or at least fresher than the defense. So you should have these bigger second halves and fourth quarters, which is good for us to remember down the line here. The Falcons, yes, I will most likely be playing them full game, but also second half, and kind of be ready with those second half lines and those fourth quarter lines as they come up in live betting. So just a good thing to note there. A couple of plays that I did either make or I'm about to make after reading this, though. The Falcons to make the playoffs, so they are, in my opinion, and based on what I'm reading here, the best team in that division. And they have a very easy schedule. I believe they have the second easiest schedule, or the third easiest schedule of the NFL. Aside from that, to Falcons, week 1, it's -3 if you can find it, or just the money line if you want to do that. But Falcons week 1 versus the Panthers is a really, really big play for me. And then lastly, I should say, Falcons play the Cardinals in week 10. Right now, it's a -3.5 line. Like I was just saying, that line is going to grow larger and larger and larger as the Cardinals continue to let us know how bad they are. If you don't get that line now and you wait till week 10, I can almost guarantee you're going to see Falcons -9, Falcons -10, something like that. Get it now, get yourself a good number, and sit there and wait. Even if it's just like a small play, even if it's just a half play, whatever, just get it now, get the good number, keep that in your pocket. Next team, though, is the Panthers. I do want to try to at least show you the both sides of this game here. Panthers look like they're going to be in for some regression, really mainly due to like fumble luck, field goal luck, those kind of things. So in both of those particular categories, they had the best year last year out of the entire NFL. They had the best fumble luck, meaning that they fumbled and they recovered it, right? And that is luck. It's like not less skill to be close to the ball when it falls. It's just luck. It just kind of bounces your way. Field goal luck, same thing. They were number 1 in that category as well. Field goal luck is basically when you're making field goals that are beyond like the average field goal, but not just a little beyond. Typically, these are field goals that are less than like 60%, right? So you're making those, and you have other teams missing field goals that they should make. So they were number 1 in that category as well. Also, a lot of their yardage came because of yards after the catch, right? So if you look at their numbers, they have like a 7.3 reception, something like that. A lot of that came because the passes were very, very short, like 3-4 yards or even behind the line of scrimmage, and then somebody made a play happen. The problem is the guys who made these plays happen are gone. Christian McCaffrey made them happen at the beginning of the year. He got traded obviously last year. DJ Moore was making those plays happen. He's out of there. Donta Foreman made those plays happen after McCaffrey was gone. He's out of there. So the guys who are really propelling an offense forward are all gone. So now they're going to be starting a rookie quarterback with a coach who notoriously starts slow. I like Frank Reich. I do. He's actually one of my favorite coaches in the NFL, but he's very notorious for these slow starts. If you remember with the Colts, I think he was like 7-0-1, or I'm sorry, 0-7-1, or somewhere around that line, where he just could not get a win in week 1. He got a tie the last year he was there, and that was pretty much the best he did. Now, I do think a lot of that is just his coaching style, and he's very analytical, and he waits for kind of weaknesses to show up in his opponent, so he does typically get better as the year goes on. But this year, again, he's starting with the rookie quarterback. He starts slow, and you're going to play a Falcons team who's pretty damn good. Now, this is a very defensive team. What Frank Reich got left with was a very, very strong defense, at least personnel-wise. So that team should be able to keep the unders in a lot of these games, especially with the Falcons team, who we expect to run a whole lot and be kind of a slower-paced team. So that's another play we may want to look into, Falcons-Panthers under for week 1. Aside from that, we're going to look to play this Panthers team after week 7. That's their bye week. So the rookie quarterback settling in, hopefully having that week to kind of catch his breath. Again, Frank Reich typically improving as the season goes on. And in the second half of the season, they do have a much easier schedule, and they don't have any rest disadvantages. So in the second half of the season, either they have the rest advantage or it's equal playing field with a more seasoned, although still rookie quarterback, and then a coach who has kind of looked at the weaknesses of his opponents. So after week 7 is when we're looking to play the Panthers. Ravens are the next team on the list here. Ravens, with Lamar Jackson, only 4 games have been lost by more than a touchdown. So he's played 60 games. Only 4 of those have been quote unquote out of it at the end of the game. So obviously great stat to have. Lamar is at least going to keep you in the game, if not win you the game. His personal win record with the Ravens is 45-15. Now, this team is going to also get a lot of really good explosive offensive pieces, mostly with Zay Flowers being my top pick or prospect for that team, but you're also going to add Odell to that mix, and you had J.K. Dobbins coming in healthy. Really just a great offense, at least on paper, right? And they should provide pretty good production. But on top of all that, you also have an offensive coordinator coming in, Todd Monken from Georgia, who makes tight ends look amazing. And he's going to be coming into a team that has Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, who Mark Andrews was already amazing. He's been amazing for a while. Isaiah Likely is another great tight end. Last year was his rookie year. He did produce when Mark Andrews was out, but I think it was really hard for them to get him involved, especially because at the end of the year, Lamar wasn't there when he really should have been at his best. So, couple who should be coming into a pretty good usage rate with this new offensive coordinator. And he's coming into, obviously, great offensive pieces with finally an offensive-minded, truly offensive-minded offensive coordinator. I think you're going to see some really explosive plays from this team. You're going to see them pass a lot more. You're going to see them with a faster rate. It's just going to be all around better, at least. Again, this is all on paper. This is from what we've been reading, what I've been hearing, seeing, everything. The offense looks to take a big step forward, and it's going to need to keep up with teams like the Bills, like the Bengals, like the Chiefs in the AFC. But the defense on the Ravens side is a little bit better, in my opinion, and they have a little bit more mobility as far as how they want to play, whether it's run, pass, whatever, just because of the way that they are set up. Now, they have a tough schedule of offenses, but they have good timing with the teams as far as when they play them. They only have one big rest disadvantage, and that's in Week 17 versus the Dolphins, which who knows what the hell's going to be going on in Week 17, if the Dolphins are even going to be good at that point, or Tua is going to even be able to stand up at that point. So that's the only real big disadvantage that they have going into it. Like I said, rest disadvantage that is. But other than that, pretty solid team that I'm looking to play on, and it's another one of my teams that's just a good play on for me this year. Next, we have the Bears. Poor coaching decisions really kind of cost them last year, and you can see it from the grading sheet here. This is the third, they're the third worst team on the list here. Matt Eberflus just did not produce the way he should have with that team, and don't get me wrong, mind you, obviously you have a new quarterback, or really everything new, right? Because it's his first year with the team. He had never worked with Fields. Fields had never worked with him. So, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of an adjustment. But they are in for some positive regression this year. They do have an easy schedule offensively and defensively. Fields, what he did great last year was creating on third downs. So there's like a 3 or 4 week game stretch. I believe it's weeks 9 through 13 last year, where Fields was just amazing. Like, he was lighting up people. If you play fantasy, he just had like blowout games for you, where he was putting up like 40 plus points. Just great. Most of that production came on third down. Third down was his like bread and butter. This dude could do whatever he needed to do on third down. A lot of times it was because they were expecting the run. They were expecting these inefficient plays from the offense. So the defenses kind of sat down on them, and either Fields hit them over the top or Fields broke loose, and he got loose for quite a bit, especially if they were playing man defense on him, right? So you have a quarterback who can make things happen even when his coach is not, quote unquote, helping him. They did add DJ Moore. So he did a really great job without even honestly having like receivers. I mean, his offensive pieces last year were just really subpar. This year with DJ Moore, he at least has a true number one receiver. Now let's see how they use him. But at least they have a guy there that they can use. And then they have a pretty good stable of running backs now. Aside from Khalil Herbert, you've got Dante Foreman. You have Roschon Johnson. All those guys there. You actually have 2 Texas running backs there, right? Both those guys, Foreman and Roschon Johnson, are from Texas. Khalil Herbert is just, these guys all produced in college. They've done decent, if not above average, in the NFL. Obviously, Roschon Johnson is a rookie. But you have these guys who can really, really run the ball. Should look like the Atlanta team from last year. The only thing is the Bears don't have a great offensive line. Now, they did draft Darnell Wright, so their offensive line should hopefully potentially take a step forward, but it was a really subpar last year. Hopefully, if it takes the step forward and Eberflus can take a step forward as well, this team should look better. This team should be closer to like an 8-8 season and kind of build off of that. Bengals are next here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 2 more teams to go here. Sorry, I was counting these through. So we're going to go over the Bengals and the Browns. Bengals, though, struggled starting the season against 2 high safeties last year. They were struggling with the 2 high just the same way that Kansas City was struggling the week before or the year before them. The 2 high safety issue, I know everybody heard about it last year and even the year before. But when you are truly a passing team, that hurts. The Bengals were trying to do a lot of play action. They were trying to do a lot of under center stuff. And the bad part was, even when they were running the ball, they were not really seeing success. And not seeing success against these boxes were pretty light, like 7-man boxes. So Joe Mixon's numbers were not great. If you get a chance to read through this book, Joe Mixon's efficiency was very, very inefficient. Even like by running back standards, he was bottom half of the league, didn't really produce. He basically got only what was going to be blocked for him, and that's pretty much it. And that is a big reason that they did not want to pay him. With all of the receiving weapons out there, defenses were honoring the pass and kind of letting them get whatever they could on the ground, and Joe Mixon just could not take advantage of it. So, not really high on Mixon this year, although the team is good, and he's still going to produce numbers, right? Because the defense is just going to give him what he can get. He's just not an elite talent, and at least not last year. Maybe he will get better this year, but I'm not planning on it. What did the Bengals do, though, to fix that issue, and how did they kind of, get as good as they ended up being last year? Well, one of the biggest things here was that when it came to being under center, especially when they ran play action, it was taking a while for Joe Burrow to take the snap, turn his back to the defense, do the play action, turn back around, readjust, reevaluate the defense, because now he has to look at them all over again, see where everybody's at, and then pick his guy. So by the time all that was going on, 1, he had pressure in his face. 2, nobody was really getting open. And 3, his downfield reads were definitely not there. So you have a 3 read play reduced down to at least 2, if not 1. All of that to say that what they did is they went to a shotgun formations. So shotgun, much less play action, basically was just get him the ball and get the ball out as soon as possible. Get him the ball where he does not have to turn around. He can keep his eyes on the defense and make quicker decisions and take what's open as soon as it becomes open. That's really the adjustment they made. I do expect to see that continue this year. The only thing is I don't know if it's going to start off in week 1, because traditionally this Bengals offense has been pretty weak come week 1. Now I think we had a comment not too long ago saying, hey, that might have been because of injuries and things. I don't know if it was necessarily because of injuries, but I do think it was because of coaching. And I think that the fix that they made last year could come into this year, and if it does, we could see a Bengals team that rolls right out of the gate, and if they have a hot start, they're definitely in the mix, just like we all expect them to be, and are going to be the Bengals of old starting from week 1. So I still like the under because they are still in a divisional game for week 1, but don't be surprised if you see them put up some points and then maybe have to take their foot off the gas kind of in the second half, maybe fall back into like a slower pace game. That is another thing that the Bengals are doing, getting out to good starts towards the second half of the year and then kind of slowing down, letting their guys catch their breath, and just going more into like a run game. So all of that fits the MO. Still like the under, just thought you guys should know. Lastly, though, we are going to talk about the Browns. Now, Browns last year leaned too heavily into the run game and to the 12 personnel. So if you don't know, 12 personnel means 1 tight end, 2 running backs. The efficiency out of that was just terrible. And Deshaun Watson was bad. Deshaun Watson didn't pass the eye test. If any of you watched him, and I'm sure you did, just his regular passes, like from 5-10 yards, did not look good. They looked like something you would see at like a middle school game, maybe high school. I mean, this guy was throwing at people's ankles. He couldn't make reads. He couldn't get the passes right. So a lot of us are hoping that was just rust, and that with a full offseason, he'll be better. But a lot of that was coaching as well, of course. 12 personnel, like I said, just wasn't working. They were trying, and my assumption is, they were trying to keep him protected by keeping their 2 tight ends in. But by doing that, they really limited their offense. They ended up having to go very heavy and have guys that weren't really great at getting downfield, doing a lot of underneath stuff that just wasn't efficient, especially because they are such a heavy run team. Basically, defenses just started playing real short on the line, and you just really couldn't get much done when they could have or should have been going over the defense, and they just weren't. This year now, they should be leaning more into the pass. Now that they added Elijah Moore on top of Amari Cooper, you have decent receivers. You have a quarterback that has now had a full offseason, preseason workouts, at least a couple games with the team already. Hopefully knocked a lot of that rust off, ready to go. They're going to do what they can do or what they need to do to get Watson going again. They're paying him too much money to not do that. So they're going to try their best to get him going. Chubb should have an increased usage as well as stats. Obviously, Kareem Hunt isn't there anymore, but they brought in Elijah Moore. They're using Njoku out of the passing game. If this team can get going with their passes, with their efficiency, with Deshaun Watson, which is, again, what they should be, and I'm positive they are trying to do, not just because of the money, but because of who they're bringing in, you're going to see Nick Chubb not just get more touches because he's the true, number 1 running back now, but you're going to see him be more efficient. The offensive line was not giving him a whole lot of holes last year, and that part of the offense has not really improved, but the mere fact that you're going to have to honor this receiving threat once they show it out there means that they can't just put 8 guys in the box anymore. You're going to have to keep a safety high, if not 2 safeties high, to make sure Amari Cooper doesn't go crazy, to make sure Elijah Moore doesn't go crazy, and you're going to have to match up with Njoku. So you're going to have to take guys out of the box to kind of match up down the field, which is going to give Nick Chubb open running lanes. On top of that, you have Deshaun Watson, who hopefully is still mobile. He was mobile last year. Don't expect him to have any big step backs this year, but having to guard that and not being able to immediately bite down on the play action is going to also help, not just for Nick Chubb, but the team in general. So I'm buying Nick Chubb pretty much everywhere I can as far as like underdog, fantasy, whatever. But that's the Browns. At least that's the highlight notes from the book this year. Those are the first 8 teams, guys. I said in the last video, we are going to keep breaking these teams down. We're going to do all 32 teams between now and the Hall of Fame game. So this is going to be 4 different videos. Each video with 8 different teams, plus whatever else comes up for the day. Like today, it was the preseason matchups. So hopefully all this was informative. Hopefully, like I said, you guys will give me a like and a comment below. A sub if you're not already subbed. And if you have not opened a book yet and you don't have something going, you have not put any money down yet, it's not too late. Please look at my bookie and GT bets. See if that's a good fit for you guys. They are giving great bonuses right now, typically like 100% bonus for new members. GT bets is actually giving you 150% when you open up with them. Rollovers are rollovers, obviously, but they are some of the best that I've seen. Typically, my bookie is like a 6 times rollover, which is one of the lowest I've seen for 100% match. GT bets, I believe, is 10, which is pretty much the average, if not just a little below the average for the market out there. So thank you guys again. I appreciate you for sticking in here, listening to me on this one. You guys have a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more teams.